8.02, one-time funding needs. And Dr. Noonan and Ms. Michael?
Yes, and I'll sort of kick off the next two items maybe in one fell swoop, so you don't have to come back to me again for 8.03. But there are two things this evening that we're anxiously awaiting hearing from you about, and many of you we've heard about or heard from this about. The first is one-time funding. As you are all aware, at the end of each year, we do have some carryover funds, and this year, in addition to the carryover funds, through our revenue sharing agreement, we'll be getting a small amount of money. I say small, it's actually quite big, but relative to what we sometimes get, it's a little smaller than we're used to, but nonetheless, we're very excited to have the extra funding to help us with some of our one-time needs. These are needs specifically that do not require funding year over year, so oftentimes there are things that are capital in nature or not quite reaching that threshold of capital, et cetera. And want to thank you in advance for, or thank you for engaging in the tool that we sent you. And the next 8.03, Ms. Michael's going to share with you also a one-pager that sort of outlines what some of the budget priorities look like going into this coming budget cycle. It's never too early to start talking about the budget. This does feel a little bit early, but I think it's an important time for us to begin talking about it because many of the things that are in the budget are sort of baked because of our collective bargaining agreement. And so it gives us an opportunity to get a little bit further ahead on the budget time-wise than we typically do. So 8.02 is the one-time funding needs. We'll go through the information that you all shared back with us after we shared with you. And 8.03 is the budget priorities. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Michael.
Thank you so much, Dr. Noonan. First off, I'd really like to thank the entire school board for your input in terms of these one-time funding priorities that we had asked about. I'm going to first talk about our daycare fund. Daycare is our self-supporting program. And the questions that we asked in terms of our survey was first, should the daycare fund balance be used to regrade and replant the grass field at Mount Daniel Elementary School with an estimated cost of $20,000? Then what we've showed in the bottom part of this chart was the feedback response that we received. So there were 3 responses that said, yes, I support using daycare fund balance to address this request, and then 2 who said, I defer to the recommendation of the leadership team. The second item for the daycare fund was the playground fence at Oak Street. Should the daycare fund balance be used to install a taller playground fence at Oak Street? And that's between the playground and the community use path behind it. And in that case, there were 5 defer to the recommendation of FCCPS leadership. Related to the playground fence, we did receive a question regarding the need for increased security. Originally, this request for a fence was submitted as part of our capital improvement plan request. And the fence is really helpful both during the day when we think of recess, but also when daycare is using the playground in the afternoon. The community use path adjacent to the playground has a lot of traffic, and a taller fence would just be a more substantial barrier, which I think everyone feels like would be a more secure solution to ensuring that we're not mixing people that are walking on that community path with people inside the playground. Yes?
And just for the, I guess, community's knowledge, how much is in the left over in the daycare fund balance?
So in terms of the daycare fund balance, let me flip to that page. Thank you for the question. Sorry, I should have flipped to the fund balance page first. The daycare fund balance, after we account for the encumbrances and the uses in the FY25 budget, the remaining fund balance for daycare is $620,415.
Just a quick question. Have there been any reports of problems between interactions between kids on the playground and community members using the path?
So we have had instances where there have been activities or people who are appearing suspicious or impaired being on that path, right, where we've been able to have security call the police and intervene. So we have had some. I wouldn't say it's a lot, but we have had reported incidents.
Thank you.
So if there are no other questions in terms of the daycare
Ms.
fund?
Henderson,
Oops.
sorry.
Hi, sorry, can't see you. Are there any other priorities that the daycare staff or advisory board have asked for these, that would be limited by the use of these funds for this purpose?
I'm not aware of any other needs that the daycare advisory board has asked that these would get in the way of. I know the daycare advisory board is really going to be monitoring the fees and looking at the impact of the new sliding scale that improved or enhanced the benefits in terms of support to families with lower income. And I know the advisory board is meeting Monday, so I'm sure they'll be discussing these, right, and seeing if they have any other input for items.
And I think I know the answer to this, having had kids in the daycare program, but just for community, both the grass playground at Mount Daniel and the playground at Oak Street are things regularly used by the daycare program, right?
Correct. Thank you very much for that question. Yes, both of those items are very much used by daycare, and funding in the daycare fund is funds generated by fees that parents have paid for daycare. So we have always used that funding to do things that enhance and improve the daycare program.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions on daycare, I'll move on to community use funding. So the first thing in terms of community use funding, the question we asked was, should we be able to use community use fund balance to purchase a Genie lift? And that's a lift that would allow us to replace light bulbs in the gymnasium and reach things that are up higher. Gym lights are the things that we most frequently change. And those responses were 1, yes, I support, and 4, I defer to leadership. And then the next item regarding community use funding is the ADA playground path at Mount Daniel. And we have a very spectacular student who's at the middle school who had come to school leadership and advocated that we put an ADA pathway inside the playground at Oak Street in terms of ensuring that if children are in wheelchairs, their wheelchairs won't get stuck in the mulch. And we have, with the board's tremendous support, previously funded that path at Oak Street. And this funding request would be to put a similar path at Mount Daniel. So it's a poured rubber surface that would allow people who are mobility challenged to more easily get to playground equipment without getting stuck in the mulch. And in this case, there was 1, a support, and 4, defer to FCCPS leadership. And then the next item is the gym lights at Mary Ellen Henderson. This request was to replace the lights inside the gym at Mary Ellen Henderson with LED lights. And there were 5. I defer to FCCPS leadership. And we received a great question regarding the lights, which was with the reasonableness of this cost. And we should have been very clear in the description, and we're not, that the cost isn't just to replace the light bulbs, but we need to replace every single fixture in the gym. So there are nearly 50 fixtures, so that's what accounts for that significant cost. And then the last item related to the Community Services Fund is the scoreboard at the stadium field. Our athletic boosters have been diligently raising funds and have raised approximately 50% of the cost of replacing the scoreboard at the athletic stadium field at the high school. So in terms of the responses here, there were 3, yes, I support, and 2, I defer to FCCPS leadership. Regarding the scoreboard, we did receive feedback in terms of the scoreboard is seen by our community. It's used by thousands of visiting teams, spectators. For those of you who have seen the scoreboard, it does look very poor in its current condition. I know it has weeds growing around it, but in addition, if you look at it, it's very faded, difficult to read, and it really does not currently fit in with the modern aesthetics of our high school. So any questions on community services, community use funding?
Oh, I had a comment about the ADA pathway on the Oak Street playground, and I just wanted to agree with you that student who was advocating is exceptional. They are wonderful, and I remember this coming up at the Special Education Advisory Committee, and I just wanted to say thank you for being so responsive to his and his family's concerns and solving this problem. I think it's just a wonderful opportunity for the student voice to be heard and the committees to help advocate. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Anderson.
Hi. Can you help educate me for context again on what the community use fund is, where the money comes from, and whether there are any constraints on how we use those funds?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. So inside our Community Services Fund, we have community use is one of those components. Daycare is also included in that same fund, but we're specifically talking with these requests about community use funding. That funding is generated from fees that we charge outside organizations who use our school buildings and our fields. We have different tiers of rental fees. They are much lower, of course, if you're a nonprofit in the city as compared to a for-profit agency outside of the city. And we charge fees to those organizations, and we generally use those fees to help us upkeep our fields, our equipments, and our buildings, as well as to pay for the additional security that we have on hand and the additional support, whether it's staffing the buildings or cleaning as a result of those activities.
And all of these, is there any constraints on how we use that money? Meaning, are we obligated under some sort of regulation to plow it back into things the community uses the way with the daycare it has that logical connection?
So thank you. Community use is part of our Community Services Fund, just like daycare. That is a special revenue fund where the proceeds from that fund or that activity need to be used to support that activity.
So then my next question, which you could probably anticipate, is all of these items on this list, stadium field, gym lights, et cetera, are things that are areas of the campuses utilized by the community, correct?
Correct. All of these things are extensively used by the community, correct?
And do you have a sense, I have a sense from visiting campuses, but do you have a sense of how often community members are using our facilities, these facilities in particular?
Yes, so we have community members in our facilities 7 days a week and nearly the entire year long. When you look at community use specifically at the secondary campus in terms of these athletic fields, rec and parks, we have a memorandum of understanding, and after the schools use our fields, they are our first group that gets rights to use the field, and then we do rent it out to private companies, whether it's Fairfax Athletics. We have a semi-pro soccer team that's playing on our field and using our scoreboard, and many, many organizations, whether they're other private schools that are running programs in our building, community activities. There's extensive use in terms of all of these things.
That's great to hear. These 4 items, they were how were they identified as the priorities for this year?
So these 4 items are all items that had come up in terms of previous requests. The scoreboard has been something that the athletic boosters have been extensively working on for many years in terms of their advocacy and outreach. They have been both fundraising and talking about how it needs to be replaced. I'm sure some of you remember, although I like to not remember, the times when the scoreboard hasn't worked during games, which is very difficult, and that has happened on more than one occasion. So that has certainly brought that up in terms of the conversations and all of the questions about doing that. We were fortunate as part of the high school project to put in a new scoreboard for softball. And then we also were able to fund with the board support a new scoreboard for baseball. So this is the only scoreboard that hasn't been replaced. And part of our work with the boosters is we would replace it with the same kind, which would give us the ability to use the same controller over multiple boards, right? It really helps in terms of that maintenance, ongoing use, and everyone's understanding of how the equipment works. The Genie lift is something we actually really wanted when we built the high school. We knew when we built the high school that in addition to having the lights that were hard to reach in the middle school, we needed it for the high school. At that point in time, when we started to look at the Genie lift, we were actually having problems in terms of supply chain, and it was on our list of wishes that we couldn't fund at the time. So that too has been a pretty extensive, long-going request.
I appreciate all the clarification. It does sound like from the all the explanation and context that these are important investments that not only will make our facilities more appealing to more community groups to use and to continue helping support our school funds that way, but also be really beneficial to our students and staff on a daily basis.
Ms. Silverman.
Thank you for that presentation. I do apologize. As you can see, there are 5 votes for everything. There are 6 board members. I am the absent voter. But in general, I do defer to the administration on what we should be funding, so I don't think that my answer would be changing anything. So instead of having more of an opinion on things, I want to understand things. Why? So I guess my first question is, why were these funding items chosen over many of the others that we saw at the end of the work session at the last meeting? There's student desk and chair refreshment. There's I think there were a few things that were not listed on this one, but were listed on the last one.
Sure. So when we look at these items that we first talked about the daycare fund, and now we've been talking about community use fund. When we looked at what items were being recommended to be paid for using operating fund ending balance as compared to daycare or community use, we really looked at the items and determined where do we have a logical fit where our special revenue funds, both daycare and community use, could help contribute to projects that would really benefit them. So that was the first lens. So all of the things that I've walked through so far are things where those programs are really getting tremendous benefit from replacing these items, right? So in the next section, after we talk about one other item, we'll get to all of those items in the operating fund, and then we can talk about in all of those cases, there are items where it's not logical. Like it wouldn't make sense for the daycare fund, for example, to replace student desks and chairs because they're not using them as part of their program, right? So that's really the first lens when we looked at this about how we were funding items.
Okay, that makes sense. And so I guess my final question then is, all of those items that were on that list from last time, are they all on, I didn't do a comparison, but are they all on somewhere on this presentation this evening?
Yes, everything that was on the previous list will end up being covered as we work through the slide deck.
Okay. And can you remind me how much we have in one-time funds right now?
So we just walked through first daycare, and the fund balance in terms of daycare was $620,415. In terms of the community use fund balance, again, after we've accounted for encumbrances and all of our obligations in FY25, their fund balance is standing at $730,888. And then when we look at the school operating fund, go back one more. After we account for the $449,000 that we'll receive as part of our revenue sharing agreement from the general government, our fund balance was $2.1 million.
Okay, so it's 2.1 with a estimated funding need of almost 2.8.
So as we walk through all of these items, can I get to that question in just a minute?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you. And again, I mostly defer to all of you on what should be funded. So my answers probably wouldn't have changed anything. Thank you.
All right. One of the next questions we asked in the survey is additional requested support from City Council. So when we look at the fund balance at the end of this year, as Dr. Noonan indicated, the fund balance amount that we received at the end of this fiscal year of $449,000, while a substantial amount of money, is significantly less than we received in prior years. And when you look at the general government's fund balance for the end of this year, it also represents a small portion of the overall fund balance that they had available. Right, and because a large amount of their fund balance came from items outside of our revenue sharing agreement, like interest income, that funding was not slated to come to the schools. But the city manager had indicated, and it was discussed at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, that potentially the schools could make a request to receive some additional support from their one-time ending balance. So we had asked the question of the school board, of all of the one-time requests, which should we consider asking the City Council to consider funding? And in this case, people could vote for more than one item, so that's why you'll see more than 5 responses on this item. But there were 2 for the Stadium Fieldhouse refurbishment. There were 4 for asking for support with the electric buses. Those are the EPA grant that we received, where we would receive $200,000 per bus, up to 2 buses. So we would need $400,000 in local funding to match the $400,000 grant. There was funding here for hybrid vans that we use to transport students who are outplaced to other programs. There were 2 responses there, and 1 response for support with additional security cameras. And then we did receive some questions, feedback related to these questions. Again, talking about deferring to leadership team. And then items aligning with City Council's mission to become a greener city. That's part of our Government Operations Energy Action Plan. And then also hopes that the operating fund could then be set aside to complete the stadium renovations. Any questions on the items for City Council? Okay. So for the school operating fund, at the last work session, the discussion was to the superintendent, could the leadership team prioritize all of the items that we had for requests and determine which of them are kind of above the line and which of them are below the line? So when we look at the highest priority items that I will cover next, all of the items in this section total $1.5 million. So once we account for that support for the general government, all of these items could be funded, and it would bring our fund balance down to about $900,000 that could be used to help support the FY26 budget or for future priorities. All of these, if they are funded by the board, will bring our fund balance below the 2%, which is in the board's policy. So in terms of these items, for each item, we asked the school board to rank, and there were 11 items in the highest priority grouping.
Sorry, Ms. Michael, to interrupt you. We needed a clarification before you got too far.
Yeah, so I'm already confused, so I thought I'd pause before we get further in. We're looking at slide one before this one.
This one?
Yeah. So just make sure I understand. When you say with support from the general government for one of the items, do we have a sense of what that amount of support is? I'm trying to understand how we get to the 1.5 and how likely it is we're going to have to go through this type of ranking, and just trying to understand the context that we're operating in.
Yes, no, thank you. When you look at these items that were the highest ranked items in terms of requesting support from City Council, the stadium field house refurbishment is $600,000. The electric buses for $400,000, and the hybrid vans to transport outplaced students were $100,000. Right, so kind of using the middle of that and the one with the highest number of votes, $400,000. If we make the assumption that if the general government funded the electric buses, when we look at all of the other items on the list, they would total that $1.5 million.
And do we have some reason to believe that $400,000 is what the general government, this is really a question for you, Dr. Noonan, is what the general government is likely to contribute, whether it's the electric buses or something else we ask for?
We don't necessarily have a number that they have indicated that they would be interested, but they, in my conversations with the city manager, I got the sense that if there was a project or something, and it sounded singular to me, that we wanted to take a look at, to perhaps ask the council support for, we could bring something forward. So that was why we wanted to kind of get a sense from you all, what do you think might be the right thing to bring forward? We could have brought forward the stadium field because it's the most expensive, and that might have made the most sense from a financial strategic perspective, but from a partnership perspective, we thought that the electric buses, and it looks like, based on the got, might make the most sense because it also adds into that sustainability plan. I didn't get a feel that there would be much support for more than an item, but that doesn't mean that we don't necessarily have to stick with one item. We could ask for more, and if we get it, great. I think the main thing for us is, and it's more of a timing issue than anything, is that by the 1st of November, we have to make a commitment to buy these electric buses and have the money committed. So that was one of the reasons that we were glad to see it come up high from you all.
And is your recommendation as staff that, because I was the one who said I don't have enough information to be able to make a recommendation. Is the staff recommendation that we ask the city government to fund the electric buses?
It is, yes. And what you'll see now are the things that the staff, not myself, but the staff that I asked to put items above you're going to see all the things that are above the line now. And if we funded all the things above the line and we were able to get the city council to pay for the $400,000, that would be $1.5 million, and we'd have enough to do all the things above the line at this point.
And philosophically speaking, I know you told us this last work session, but I want to ask it again. Can you explain why this particular set of funds that we've been talking about cannot be used for ongoing recurring?
Sure. It's a great question. The reason that so the best way that I can describe it is think about your own home, finances. This is essentially like a savings account. It's an account that we have that's a set aside, that's year-end balance, that we get some from the general government, and then we have some for ourselves. If we were to start paying, for example, all of our electric bills out of our savings account, ultimately our savings account would be depleted, and we wouldn't be able to continue to pay for our electric because we don't have any recurring funds to pay for that. That's why that operational budget versus the year-end balance is really important. The operational budget is the money that's recurring. So ultimately what happens is we spend recurring funds on things like electric and bills and teacher pay and things like that because they keep coming up over and over and over again. But this is an opportunity for us to buy some things that perhaps we've been waiting to purchase that we can spend some of our savings account on at this point because we have the money, and even if we spent all $1.5 million of what we've got, we'd still have about $900,000 in the bank.
And then that $900,000, we keep it in the bank for?
We'll do this again next year, where we'll look at those things that perhaps we weren't able to get this year, but maybe take another look at them next year because we'll have the $900,000 in savings, essentially, in one-time money. And then at this time next year, we'll do the closeout of this year's books. And we may have, through salary lapse and some other things, also have some additional one-time money to add to that.
But saving that $900,000 ensures we at least have some one-time money next year, regardless of what happens.
And for this year also, because if something were to happen where we, let's say 2 of our white fleet cars went down and we absolutely had to buy cars and we spent down our savings to zero, we wouldn't be able to buy any cars. So it gives us some flexibility in the event that something really happens and we have a need.
Thank you for that clarification. I have one more for you, and then we get back to Ms. Michaels. I would expect that some of these things on this list come with recurring maintenance costs.
Correct.
And so I'm just curious about the economic impact of those. If we go ahead and spend the $1.5 million and we're able to do everything we want to do,
Yep.
which would be amazing,
Yep.
what the recurring maintenance costs are, and if that would be, if that would cause a problem for going forward budgets.
Yeah, I think, and I may defer to Kristen on this one, Ms. Michael on this one, but the maintenance costs are a part of our operational budget. And so, for example, when we look at, let me just pull it up. If we were to move forward with the hybrid fleet, we would be replacing others. So the maintenance costs would be sort of one for one. The maintenance may go up because of the type of vehicle it is, but we also account for that in the regular budget process. And you'll see in the next the next item where we're adding a little bit of money into the budget for next year to account for inflation and some additional costs for contracts. And those contracts are maintenance contracts, things like that.
Thank you.
So in this next section, we asked the school board to rank all of the items in this highest priority group. So in case we didn't receive any additional support from the general government, we would have them in order. So I'll just quickly go through each of these, and then I do have a summary at the end. So in terms of the stadium field house refurbishment, you can see that there was 1 first, second, and third choice, as well as a 10th and an 11th. We did receive this question, our feedback regarding the field house, right? Certainly the field house is very important in terms of the concession funding that is generated by the athletic boosters. The comment here also truly talks to some of the real reason we need to upgrade and replace this field house, which is related to the toilets overflowing. I know many of us have walked through when the floor is wet in that facility. There are many, many, many problems related to that building in terms of windows being difficult to open, many other components. When we look at the electric buses, we had 2 first choice votes, 1 second, 1 fourth, and 1 10th. Hybrid vans to transport outplaced students, there was a 3rd place, 5th place, 6th place, 9th place, and 11th place. The marquee sign for the secondary campus, 1 first choice, 1 6th choice, 2 8th choices, and 1 11th choice. We did get feedback regarding the marquee sign. It is a great placemaking element, this comment says, particularly as the additional development is going on and helping people locate the high school. For the technology security monitoring, this is having an external company help us with monitoring for security. 2 4th choices, 2 8th choices, and a 10th choice. And then in terms of digitizing staff and student files, in terms of this, there was 1 3rd choice, 1 5th choice, 2 7th, and a 9th. This really is digitizing students' cumulative files. So their final student records that we have after the students graduate. We have more of them than you would ever believe, and we're running out of storage, and staff files are the same way. We're required to keep staff files for an exceedingly long period of time. Literacy intervention materials, it received a 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 6th choice. Rekeying the keys at Mary Ellen Henderson to be on the master key set with Meridian and Mount Daniel had 1 5th choice, 2 6th choice, a 9th, and an 11th. Replacing musical instruments had 1 2nd choice, 2 4th place choices, 2 10th place choices. And then replacing the hot water heaters at Mary Ellen Henderson has a 2nd choice, 2 7th place choices, 1 9th, and 1 11th. And then lastly, the security cameras, additional security cameras, has a 3rd place choice, a 5th, a 7th, and an 8th, and a 9th. So to summarize all of that together, this chart shows all of those charts that we went through, and it shows how many votes in each of those places each item received. So from there, that information was taken and points were awarded as follows. So if it was a first choice, it got 11 points. 2nd choice, 10 points, all the way down to if it was an 11th choice, it got 1 point. So this is the opposite of golf scoring, in that the highest number of points means it had more of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd choice rankings. So this chart shows the items in order based on the points received using that scoring methodology. So in that case, you can see the item with the highest number of points was the literacy intervention materials, then the electric buses, the stadium field house refurbishment, musical instruments, and all the way down. So this really summarizes all of those prior charts.
Ms. Henderson.
Thank you for sharing, compiling this information. It's interesting to see. With all due respect to my colleagues, I'm far more interested in what staff thinks about the overall rank order and if this ranking comports with staff's priority.
I'll just say that everything on this list ended up above the line. And so they're all priorities to us, but I think this represents a pretty good reflection of what our thinking is as well. So we are very, very much aligned. When we saw this rank order, I think our comments to each other were, hey, we're close. So I think we're good.
That's great. And are there any things on this list where the risk is higher of not doing it? Like, for example, I see Rekey Henderson to master key set came in last in this assessment of ranking. And I don't know if not rekeying it is a security issue versus if it's a convenience issue or something else. So I'm just curious if there are any things on here that are higher risk if we don't do them.
I think from a safety security standpoint, the security cameras and the rekeying are really important. It seems silly to rekey on the same key, but it really is a safety security issue, particularly when we have people coming and going. And then, obviously, a lot of these things don't hit the classroom specifically, and that's probably good because we want our operational dollars to be hitting the classroom more than our one-time funds because we want them to be recurring. I would think not getting the literacy intervention materials would be problematic. But as I look at the bottom, the security monitoring, I think that's really important. I know if everything's important, nothing's important. But I think that's why we've got this list, and then there's the below-the-line stuff in the next couple of slides. And those were the things that we felt like if we didn't do the ones below the line, we'd probably be okay. I'd really like, if we could, to be able to do everything that's on this list. And we do have the funds available to do it. But that being said, it certainly is the will of the board, and we appreciate your feedback, and this was good to see.
I appreciate that, and I just have one more question. It's still not clear to me if there are significant consequences that we should be aware of knocking any of these off of this list.
If we don't, I could go each one by one. The consequences are digitizing student and staff files. It really is an efficiency measure for us. And I think the risk of not doing that would be spending a lot of money and time and energy and effort on something that we should be able to digitize. The security cameras, upgrading those, adding some, could really be a security risk if we didn't do those. The hybrid vans, part of that is greening our white fleet. We have vans that are falling apart that are not hybrid, and the general government staff that actually repair those are begging for us to take care of them. I think we could be in a situation where, if we didn't replace them and they went down, that we might not be able to get our kids to outplaced services in an efficient way. We probably would need to use a different service to get them there. The technology monitoring actually probably, as I look at this list, probably has the biggest impact. This helps us with ransom attacks. It helps us with any kind of infiltration of bad behavior. So this is a group that we worked with on another earlier this year on something else, and so having their services would be huge for us and probably keep us out of some pretty significant issues, potential issues electronically. The hot water heater is going to have to be replaced. This is a matter of whether we do it now or later. I think the challenge there is, do we wait till it blows out and then we flood the building? So I'd rather do that now. So, and then the stadium field house is, that is really, we have the capital money. And so really to do it right, it really would require us to use all of the extra operational funds. If we don't get the operational funds to do that, there are a few things we can do to cut back on that project, but it will look pretty much the same, and we probably won't be able to do all of the work inside that we had hoped. And it's not to suggest that we would continue to be hazardous or anything like that, but it would be problematic. The electric buses, if we don't get the electric buses, we don't get the electric buses. But if we don't get the money now for this, we lose the $400,000 in grants, and that would be really important to us. So that kind of gives you a sense. Musical instrument replacement, that's a really nice thing to do, and we've got some money to do it. And I think because we've got the money, we should probably put some money into the music program. So I don't know if that helps or hurts or complicates the matter more, but that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, no, it helps. Thank you.
Ms. Murphy.
Just had a question about if you could describe a little bit more about what the technology security monitoring entails, because I was trying to wrap my head around what that looks like for a one-time expenditure. Since we just had the presentation on, on technology security, I just didn't know what this was in addition to what we have existing.
Yeah, I'll let Ms. Michael talk about Arctic Wolf.
Thank you so much. So Arctic Wolf is a vendor that provides monitoring service for us potentially and for many other clients. And one of the things that we have determined is we have very good equipment, right? And we're very great in terms of being state of the art. But in order to really be more secure, right, we really do need additional support in terms of monitoring. Like one of the things is we have a great technology team, right? But there are a limited number of people, and then they're also not here on evenings, weekends, and other components. So in terms of using this funding, it would be the first time we've purchased a service like this. But at this point, we think it would be one time for the fiscal year because we would really need to assess, is the benefit that we received worth the investment we make? And is it something that long-term we really do think would improve our security posture? Or is this just something we should do now based on our current circumstances?
Thank you.
I actually have a follow-up question to that. So this would be like trying it for a year, and then if we felt like it was really worthwhile, then it would be something we would roll into the regular budget?
That is correct.
Okay.
If we determine that it's really beneficial and will improve our security posture, then yes, we could come back and ask for funding to have it continue.
Got it. But this is just a one-year trial,
Correct.
sort
It's
of?
just a 1 year.
Got it. Okay.
Chair Tice. I just would only add to that conversation to say that they did audition with us once already this year and did a really great job for us. So it's not as though we're going in without having some experience with them before, and the service and support and care that they provided us during a situation earlier in the year really sort of put us on this path of thinking, adding this extra layer would be really important. So it's not a shot in the dark, I guess is what I'm saying.
That's helpful. Thank you. Anything else before we continue?
All right. The last section that we have are the items that were the lower priority items based on leadership's opinion. So the first item or question that we had was, of all of the items that we have in terms of a one-time funding list, were there items from the one-time lower priority list that should be moved to the higher priority list? And there were 2 items that received votes. Cell phone lockers or pouches, there were 2 people who voted that should be moved from lower priority to higher priority. And then there were also 2 votes for special education professional development. The feedback questions that we had related to that were prioritizing professional development for staff. And a question about could we use title money for this. We have committed our title money for this year, but we have professional development funds that could be used to prioritize this PD, which is why this is on our lower priority list because we felt we had other funding opportunities. The second related question was also related to special ed professional development. Acknowledging that it might decrease future legal costs. And then there was feedback here too about the West Falls development on one of these lower funded items was additional support for our Legacy Grove. And our Legacy Grove really appears to have been impacted by runoff from the development. So our suggestion in terms of that is really rather than fund that at this point in time, to go back to the developer and to seek support from them in terms of the impact to that Legacy Grove. So there was support for that here. And then the last question or piece of feedback was a concern about the security risks of Yonder pouches, should we end up going in that direction.
And can I just add to that? We have purchased some Yonder pouches already. And we are piloting those in classrooms at the middle and at the high school. Each teacher at this point has 5 in case there's an issue where a kid isn't putting their middle school if a kid has a phone, but at the high school if they're not putting it in the slot, then after a certain number of occurrences, we do have the Yonder pouches. But we have not, to my knowledge, needed to use those at this point because our kids are doing very well about putting their technology away. So thank you.
And then the last question in this section is we also asked, were there any items that the leadership had put on the higher priority list that could or should be moved to the lower priority list? And there was 1 vote for the marquee sign at the secondary campus and 1 vote for digitizing staff and student files. And the related questions there are deferring to leadership on this and not feeling strongly about the digitizing files. This comment really talks about if the files are used for assessments, these are really, as I indicated earlier, the students' cumulative files or the employee files that we have to keep forever after an employee leaves. And then there was also a piece of feedback about the marquee sign seeming like a nice to have.
Right. Thank you so much, Ms. Michael. Any further comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, I guess my question is, so now what? So you have this information, now what?
So when we look at all of the items on this funding, as Dr. Noonan indicated, one of the items that really has a short time frame in terms of making a decision are the electric buses. The EPA grant that we were awarded, we need to have a decision and that funding committed by November. So we will be able to bring back a potential budget amendment to the school board at the November meeting for your action based on the feedback that we received tonight in terms of these items.
Sure, Ms. Silverman?
How quickly do you think we would get an answer from city council if we went to them asking for that to be their funding project?
I'm not sure. We have an upcoming Budget Finance Committee meeting, so we probably would raise it at that point.
Ms. Henderson?
Yeah, after this discussion, I would probably rank things very differently than I did. And so I'm curious if there's an opportunity for that, or if that would be helpful.
Or, yeah, I mean, my question is also would that even be necessary if we feel like everything, generally speaking, there were very few votes for things moving on either side of the line, and if we feel like there's a good opportunity, or there's a good likelihood that we'll be able to fund it all, is further
Yeah.
feedback needed from the board at this point?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. For us, one, I think looking at the things that two school board members wish to move up, one was cell phone lockers and pouches, and the other special education professional development. Knowing that we likely can handle the special education professional development without having to add money to the professional development fund with one-time money, hopefully takes that off the table because we can absorb a lot of that. The question then is around the cell phone lockers and pouches, and I wonder if not taking action on that now would be okay, since the board hasn't decided which direction you all are going to go with cell phones at this point, and that we do have some that we're piloting. Knowing that that's the case, and that the rank order is what it is, I would appreciate just sort of a general sense of the board tonight to know that with the hope, I guess is the hope being the strategy, which is not a strategy, but hope that the council would be interested in supporting the buses. Would you all be sort of in general okay with funding everything above the line? Because I do believe that we have the money to do that. I do believe that if we do that, we would still have enough in the bank to be able to pay for things that came up in case of emergency. We have a year now that we will end up with some more laps at the end of this year, whether we like it or not. That just sort of happens. And also that we appreciate you all going through this exercise. And for those of you that have been on the board in the past, you know that we've never done this before. So typically it's just we bring you a list and we say, here's what we need. And everybody sort of talks about it for 20 minutes and then says, okay. So this time you got to rank order them. You got to kind of talk about them a little bit more. So I'm hopeful that maybe we could just take the overall rank order list that starts with literacy intervention materials and then down to the rekeying of the master set and put that, not those things into a budget amendment, but create an amendment that moves money from that into these one-time needs. And we would bring that to you for approval at the November meeting. And if you wanted to talk about it some more, we do have a work session between now and then. We could add that to the work session. But if you're comfortable with this list, I think that would be our preference.
Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, this was a fun exercise, and you and Ms. Michael answered my question on the special ed PD, and I would say that would be a pretty high priority on my list, so I'm glad it's going to be funded. Regarding the stadium field house, is $600,000 a reasonable estimate of getting it in, like, what we want to do with it?
That's half.
Okay.
So you might remember that we also got money from the capital improvement plan by moving the Oak Street projects and reducing the amount of need at Oak Street. We were able to get some funding from the general government, city council. So this picks up the other half. So it's a nice joint project.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Any other, Ms. Silverman?
After listening to the discussion and based on what Ms. Henderson had said, that was complicated, sorry. If this could be added to the work session, in case there are any, maybe not a full discussion, but any tweaks to any of this might be helpful. I don't know if others feel the same way.
I think we can get feedback from, as we get closer, and make sure we put it on the agenda if there's needed, if it's needed, sure. Ms. Henderson?
It's not fully formed. I'm generally supportive of the staff's desire to fund everything above the line. That's not an issue. The question I have is if the city government does not fund or fund at a level, then I do think it is important to reopen the ranking and have a more fulsome conversation about that, because then we'll have to make some choices that we don't have to make yet.
Madam Chair.
That makes sense.
So, if I may, so that's a good thing to raise. So just looking at my calendar very quickly, Friday, the 18th is the next Budget and Finance meeting. I will, however, pick up the phone tomorrow or Thursday and start talking about this with the city manager and kind of see where we are. And I can talk to a couple council members. But I think there's going to be broad resonance for helping us out on these buses. But in case not, then maybe we could put it back on the agenda and say, all right, let's figure out what we do now. We got to punt.
Does that people seem generally, I'm getting head nods, but generally comfortable with this approach? Okay. Fantastic. Thank you so much.